Hello everyone, Lisa here. I'd like to get your opinion on whether my daughter is the asshole or if the family is. I need your perspectives because honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. It all started when my daughter Sarah got engaged to her boyfriend, now husband, John. They had big plans for their wedding, but also for a honeymoon they said was once in a lifetime. Of course, I was really happy for them, while also feeling a bit worried about how they planned to finance everything. When I tried asking how they would afford both a larger ceremony and an extravagant trip, I got the answer that they had started a fundraiser. They asked family, friends, and acquaintances to donate money instead of giving presents. I thought it sounded like a pretty good idea at the time, since many couples today prefer money rather than household items or something else. But I didn't realize that this would lead to an enormous storm of emotions and conflict. Anyway, Sarah and John went on social media and sent private messages asking people to donate. They created a page where they described how much the wedding meant to them, how they looked forward to standing before God, or at least before all their loved ones, and vowing eternal love, and how this would be combined with their dream honeymoon. They constantly talked about the dream trip and how expensive everything was, but also how it would mean the world to them if friends and family wanted to help out. They were quite explicit. They posted pictures of the engagement ring, wrote long posts about how they hoped that you would help them reach their goal, and so on. You know how it can be when you try to motivate people to support something financially. Sarah and John were really enthusiastic. In the beginning, the reactions were positive. I saw how several people in our family immediately commented with happy cheers. My sister Elaine, who has always been generous, donated a substantial amount of money in the very first week. My cousin Robert and his wife wrote in the comments section, "All the best. Of course you should have a wonderful start to your marriage," and sent over some money. Old friends of the family contributed as well, as did some of Sarah's coworkers and a few of John's childhood friends. The money rolled in, maybe not by the tens of thousands, but at least enough so that one could feel the wedding might really be something special. Sarah and John thanked people warmly everywhere and were so grateful, saying it warmed their hearts and that they were infinitely thankful. I remember thinking it felt nice not to worry about who would pay for what. You know, money often causes fights when planning a wedding. Now, it all seemed so peaceful. At least that was what I thought. My only little doubt was that I overheard John saying, almost in passing, that he could honestly see himself traveling around for months rather than having a short honeymoon. But I assumed he was only joking. Sarah had always been fairly traditional, at least when it came to weddings. For years, she had talked about wanting to one day get married in a beautiful dress in front of everyone, then have a romantic but not overly long honeymoon, and then come home and start building her life with her new husband. But everything changed overnight, or so it felt. Suddenly, we got a message in our family chat. Sarah and John had booked a 3-month trip to a tropical island. They didn't specify which island at first, but later revealed it was somewhere in the Caribbean. They had used a large portion of the collected funds to pay for this extended stay. The message was written with a lot of enthusiasm. "Dear family, we are so excited to let you know that we spontaneously booked our once-in-a-lifetime chance to go away for 3 months. Thanks to your incredible generosity, we could finance this dream, and we hope you understand that this is not a normal honeymoon, but a real adventure." My initial reaction was total confusion. 3 months? That long? And what about the big wedding they'd been talking about? I read on and discovered they said something like, "We know we first said the money would go to the wedding and honeymoon, but now we've realized the wedding will have to wait. We're doing this first and we'll come back with a new fundraiser later for the wedding itself. Hope you're just as excited as we are." Excited? I could only imagine how the rest of the family and friends would react. It just felt so backward. They were in the middle of planning the wedding, had received money specifically for that purpose, and suddenly they take a large chunk of it and buy plane tickets for a long vacation. The first thing I did was call Sarah. It was a conversation full of mixed emotions. She was bursting with joy. "Mom, think what an opportunity this is. We've never been abroad for so long. This is our chance to really relax, discover the world together, and truly enjoy our engagement before the wedding." I explained that I understood wanting to travel and have a great time, but I was worried about how the relatives would see it. People gave you money believing you would get married soon and use a small portion of the money for a traditional honeymoon, I said. Sarah dismissed my concerns. But Mom, a gift is a gift, right? They haven't made any specific demands on how we use the money. We really want to make the most of being young. Everything else can wait. I was completely taken aback. On the one hand, I didn't want to crush her happiness, but on the other, I suspected the enormous disappointment that would come from those who had contributed. When I then spoke to my sister Elaine, who had donated one of the largest sums, she was furious. She called it fraud and outrageous, and threatened right then and there to demand the money back. Other relatives began writing angry posts on social media. On his Facebook page, my cousin Robert said he never would have donated a penny had he known the money would go to a 3-month luxury vacation. All hell broke loose. I thought several times that Sarah and John would back down when they saw the reactions, but instead they went on the offensive by defending themselves publicly. They posted things like, "We think it's sad that some people can't allow us a little bit of happy travel time. We're young and this is our chance to see the world. We were hoping for support and joy, not criticism." Of course, the reactions were even more negative after that. People wrote, "You're ungrateful, and how can you take our money and do this?" And "Give us back our donations." It became such a huge conflict that some people in our immediate circle completely stopped contacting them. It wasn't just relatives who were upset. Several friends, colleagues, and neighbors who had supported them felt deceived. My neighbor Paula, whom I know quite well, said she donated money just to be nice. She had seen Sarah grow up and thought it would be fun to contribute to a beautiful wedding. Paula now felt taken advantage of and wrote to me in a message. "I thought it was for the wedding. The fact that they're now requesting a new fundraiser to cover the costs of the party after they've been gone for 3 months is completely insane." To make matters worse, when Sarah and John finally left on their trip, they went despite all the warnings and pleas to at least stay home and resolve the conflict first. They started posting a bunch of pictures on social media. The posts read something like, "Thank you to everyone who made this trip possible. We're having a fantastic time," with pictures of coconut drinks and white beaches. You can imagine how well that went over with those who were already upset. Comments poured in like, "Looks like you're burning our money just fine." Others wrote outright, "I want every cent back." To say that I was caught in the middle is an understatement. I had to answer for my daughter's behavior. Most people accused me of having raised Sarah to believe the entire world revolves around her. Some implied that I should force her to return the money. But I didn't have access to their accounts, and I had no authority to take anything back. I had hardly donated more than a symbolic amount myself, since I had already promised to pay for other parts of the wedding. I tried talking to Sarah on the phone from their trip, explaining how bad the atmosphere was at home. She sighed and said, "Mom, are you on my side or not? I thought you would support me. People chose to donate. They weren't forced. I don't understand all this anger. We're not asking for anything unreasonable." But in the same breath, she said they needed even more money because they were planning a wedding later and had already started considering a new donation page for the ceremony itself. I was stunned. "Please, Sarah," I said. "No one is going to give you another dime. Everyone is already furious." She replied that she hoped that those who truly loved them would continue to support them. It was then I realized she really didn't understand how hurt everyone felt. In the background, I heard John say something like, "We don't care about negativity, we do our thing." Meanwhile, rumors spread like wildfire among our extended family and friends. Several people said they wanted to cancel attending the wedding if it even happened. Others said they would only come if they could see receipts for exactly how the money was used. Everything was so bizarre that I hardly knew what to say. I ended up in this middle ground. On one hand, I'm a mother and want to support my daughter. On the other, I understand it feels terrible for those who thought the money would be used in a completely different way. When, after about a month, Sarah and John posted their new donation link to Save the Wedding, the responses were overwhelmingly clear. Not a single person donated. On the contrary, people wrote sarcastic comments like, "Aren't you satisfied with our last gift?" And "That's never gonna happen." I saw how Sarah tried making new posts explaining, "We invested in our love by taking this chance to travel. But now we need your contributions to celebrate our wedding in a way our loved ones deserve. Virtually no one took the bait. Maybe one or two people outside the family, but the amount was so small it didn't cover anything. Then the next phase came. Sarah called me in tears, saying, "No one supports us anymore. We're not even getting replies to our messages." I tried explaining that she had hit a sore spot by changing the purpose of the money in the middle of it all. "Maybe you should apologize," I said, but she was still defensive. Why should we apologize for taking advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? We haven't forced anyone. If people can't be happy for our adventure, I don't want them at the wedding anyway. That same week, she posted even more pictures, writing something like, "We're not going to apologize for following our dream." And that's when it really blew up. My sister Elaine blocked Sarah on Facebook. Several of my close friends stopped contacting me because they believed I should keep my daughter in check, and I let her behave this way. A previously very good friend of mine, who is also Sarah's godmother, cut off all contact. "I'm disappointed and hurt, Lisa. I never imagined Sarah was this selfish, and I can't understand how you can stand by and not say anything." I tried explaining that I actually had said something, repeatedly. I was completely powerless. I couldn't force Sarah and John to pay anything back or change their perspective. After 2 months, Sarah's and John's trip was in full swing. They kept posting new updates. I felt my shame grow every time I saw the pictures. I've honestly never felt such a strong sense of discomfort when looking at my own child's social media. I also started feeling anger toward John because I suspected much of this was his idea. He'd always had big dreams and a tendency to see things from a rather self-centered perspective. But of course, Sarah also bears responsibility. She's an adult and can make her own decisions. When the trip was nearing its end, Sarah and John had already realized that no more donations would come in. They wrote that they were a bit sad, that no one seemed happy for them, but that they still regret nothing. They said they would come home and try to plan the wedding on a smaller scale. When I heard smaller scale, I understood that they probably didn't intend to pay back the money already raised, but simply hoped people would still show up. I tried telling Sarah that maybe she should lie low with the wedding planning for a while, let people cool down, and slowly rebuild trust. But she answered, "I'm not going to cater to others' negative attitudes. We'll invite everyone we intended to invite. If they don't come, that's their problem." By the time Sarah and John finally came home, the atmosphere was icy. They tried inviting people to a planning meeting for the wedding, but only me and my husband, Sarah's stepfather, and one of John's friends showed up. It was embarrassing. Sarah tried to act like it was no big deal, but I saw how hurt she was by the complete lack of engagement. She started calling around to relatives to try to talk, but mostly got lukewarm responses. Some outright said they didn't want to attend the wedding. Others said they might come if Sarah and John gave a proper apology or paid back what they'd taken. And some just ignored their calls. When the wedding date finally approached, they decided to hold the ceremony in John's parents' backyard to save money. No rented venue, no orchestra, no expensive floral arrangements. They couldn't afford it, and they certainly didn't have the motivation. Of the original guest list of nearly 100 people, barely 10 showed up, and most were John's family. On my side, it was me, my husband, a cousin of mine who felt torn but came anyway to support the family, and two of Sarah's old childhood friends. The mood was so strange. No one was truly happy. Everyone seemed to be there mostly out of a sense of duty or curiosity about how the bride and groom would handle all the criticism. Sarah wore a simple white dress, nothing extravagant. John looked just as uncomfortable. I could hardly believe these were the same two who, just a few months earlier, wanted the most amazing wedding in the world. Now they stood there with scarce resources, no grand ceremony, and basically no friends in attendance. They carried out a short ceremony, officiated by a friend of John who had some sort of authority to perform weddings. My cousin and I took a few pictures, but it almost felt wrong, as though we were documenting something sad. Afterward, there was supposed to be a little get-together, but the atmosphere was so tense that most people left right after saying, "Congratulations." Sarah started crying and ran into the house. John asked us to give them a moment. I went in to talk to Sarah. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wish things had turned out differently." She sobbed and said she half regretted it, but also that she still thought everyone else was way too judgmental. It was such a tough balancing act. I didn't want to kick her when she was already down, but at the same time, I felt she needed to realize how many people she'd actually hurt. Now, a few weeks after that tiny wedding, I'm sitting here writing this post. I'm torn. I'm wondering what you all think. On the one hand, I believe Sarah and John absolutely behaved irresponsibly and selfishly. They asked for donations specifically for the wedding and a short honeymoon, then did something else entirely. They could have talked to people in advance, explained that their plans had changed, offered to pay back anyone who didn't agree with the decisions. Instead, they just pushed ahead as if no one's opinion mattered. On the other hand, I'm their mother. I want people to forgive them. But maybe it's unreasonable to demand forgiveness from people who feel tricked. Also, isn't it true that when you give a gift, you don't always know what the money is used for? Is it really deception? Or is it more of a moral gray area where, in hindsight, they should have handled communication in a much better way? I notice I'm trying to find some logic in something that, for many, is emotionally charged. Most people believe Sarah and John acted unethically. Period. Several relatives have asked me outright, do you think Sarah did wrong? I find it hard to answer simply. Yes, I think they could have handled it differently, but I also think a gift is a gift. You can talk about the morality of promising one thing and then doing another. But Sarah keeps insisting she never promised precisely how each penny would be used, only that the money would go toward the wedding and honeymoon. And she claims that a 3-month trip is indeed a form of honeymoon, just taken before the wedding. But I strongly doubt that's what people believed when they donated. Most assumed the wedding would happen within a few weeks or a month, not half a year later, and that the honeymoon would be maybe 2 weeks long. Relations in our family are now seriously damaged. Elaine won't even speak to Sarah anymore. She says, I can forgive a lot, but not lying and manipulation of this level. My cousin Robert never wants to see Sarah and John again. My friends keep asking me how I can even defend Sarah, if that's what I'm doing. The truth is, I'm not defending her actions. I'm just trying to understand. She's my daughter. This is someone I've loved, guided, and looked after her entire life. I want to believe she's not a bad person, but that she and John simply took a reckless gamble and thought they could escape the consequences. Now they sit here with their shame, broken relationships, and a rather sad wedding that is already over, plus a bitter aftertaste for almost everyone involved. I recently wrote a letter to Sarah explaining how I feel. I said I love her, but that I think she has to realize that many people feel hurt and cheated. Maybe she and John need to send a personal message to each donor to apologize, at least for their poor communication. Sarah responded briefly that she'd think about it, but that John feels it's pointless because the damage is already done, and you can't change the past. It hurts me to see how stubborn they are. I actually think an apology would help everyone, even if it comes late. But I can't force them. They're adults. These are their relationships with all these people on the line. Maybe this forum isn't used to this kind of story, but I feel like I had to get it all down. I've actually had trouble sleeping at night. I walk around with a gnawing feeling that I should have warned Sarah more forcefully or stopped it earlier. But I had no legal way to do that. The money was in their account. I tried to talk sense into them, but I was told I was old-fashioned and unable to be happy for their joy. I also try to see it from Sarah's perspective. She loves John and wants to make him happy. He's long dreamed of traveling for an extended period, and she might have seen it as a nice gift to give him that. But somewhere along the way, I think she realized too late just how many people she hurt. It's like in her eagerness to do something unforgettable, she completely forgot the consequences. People around me have stopped talking about it, but it feels more like they don't want to deal with it at all rather than having forgiven them. I hear whispers sometimes. How does Lisa cope with that? Or, that must be tough for her. And some say, I won't talk to Sarah until she comes and apologizes herself. At the same time, she's my daughter, and he's my son-in-law. I wish we could have some kind of fresh start, but I'm afraid their credibility is gone for a long time. They don't have a honeymoon to look forward to now, because it's already happened. Nor did they get the wedding they dreamed of. They're also faced with the fact that many family members don't want to invite them to future family gatherings. I'm not trying to be a doomsayer, but that's how reality looks right now. It tears me up inside. Is it really worth breaking so many ties because they chose to travel for 3 months before the wedding and used money donated for something else? Then again, trust is something you have to safeguard. I understand that my sister, my cousin, and everyone else feel that Sarah destroyed that trust. I can't even see how a reconciliation could happen unless Sarah and John take the initiative to offer a genuine apology. I've talked to a few of our relatives who said if they could admit they did wrong and maybe offer some compensation, then maybe we'd talk to them. But as it stands now, no thank you. I'm afraid Sarah is too proud to do that. I heard just yesterday how she mentioned, at least we got memories for a lifetime, but with a hint of sadness when she added, I just wish Mom understood how important it was for us. I do understand, but I wish she understood how everyone else felt too. In summary, the situation is that my daughter and her husband asked for donations for a wedding and a traditional honeymoon. When they got the money, they decided instead to go abroad for 3 months, something they considered an extended honeymoon, but didn't inform anyone about in advance. The guests and family were angry and felt deceived. Now I'm here, torn, wondering who was most in the wrong. I personally think Sarah and John acted carelessly and disrespectfully toward all the generous people. But I can't help wondering why so many are so unforgiving. Why do they feel no desire to forgive and move on? Perhaps because they haven't gotten a sincere apology, of course. Perhaps because they believe you can't forgive something like this if the other party doesn't admit their mistake. I don't know. I feel torn between my love for my daughter and my loyalty to the rest of the family who feel cheated and hurt. Sarah and John now live as a married couple, but they're quite alone. They carry everyone's frustration on their shoulders. I wish I could say things look bright, but they don't. I've spoken privately with some of you, those of you who know me from before, and gotten different advice. Some say I should distance myself from Sarah to show how serious this is. Others say I should support her through thick and thin, because she's my daughter. But I no longer know what's right. So I'm simply asking you, were Sarah and John the assholes in this story, or did the family and friends go too far?
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.